other side of the coin. I've got a footballing extraordinaire today. I'm so happy. It's been a while. I've been talking to this gentleman for a little while, and I've been trying to get him to my channel. I'm so pleased and glad that I finally got him. It's none other than Brian. You guys would know a lot about him. He's got some cheeky tweets every now and then as well, and yeah, I finally got him, and then hopefully we have a great show. How do you feel, Brian?
I feel okay. Can't wait to get started.
Brilliant. So I've got just a quick shout out. I've got James, I've got Ellie. I think a few other people are going to join soon as well. If anyone can, out of James or Ellie, please do let Max know as well. He was keen to come on, but I think he's sleeping. But if you guys can shoot him a quick message, let him know that we've just started. So yeah, today's episode, what we're going to cover just before we kick off, I suppose, is just let our viewers know what the topics are going to be. So I want to cover all things current affair at the moment in social media, specifically in football Twitter, because we spend our time, most of our time in there. So in the past week, there's been a hot topic about player hypes, specifically about Houssam Aoaur, Mount, and I suppose the people that like Mount don't necessarily always like Aoaur. The people that like Aoaur don't necessarily always like Mount. So just understanding that concept as to what is the fans' thought process and how, why is it the way it is at the moment. Next thing I want to talk about is the player hate or dislike. For instance, Jorginho, who's someone who's been somewhat hated upon last season, and all of a sudden there's a lot of people that are liking him this season, but there's still at the same time certain parts of the fan base are not so keen on him. So just understanding what thought process people have around hating or disliking certain players, and not just specifically Jorginho, but we can touch on Willian and Alonso and a few other players as well. Then after that, we want to move into VAR and talk about all the mysteries and all the confusion that goes around VAR. Obviously, we saw quite a few incidents against Norwich's game that we had, and where we, us as fans, we feel that VAR should have kicked in, but for some reason we didn't. So, want to get your perspective on that, and finally finish it off with our match preview against Sheffield. So hopefully we finish it off with a bang. You feel comfortable about that, Brian?
I'm very comfortable.
Cool. All right, Brian, first up then, player hype. This past week, we've seen so many tweets from so many different accounts, large accounts, small accounts, you name it. And it all started for me, and I want to get your perspective as well. For me, when obviously Mount has been doing good. He scored week before last week against Leicester. He scored again against Norwich. Whole heap of hype going around him. And as soon as that happens, there's a certain fan base that comes in and want to talk about Houssam Aoaur. Now, what I want to understand from you, and I want to get your perspective, why is that link? Why can't we appreciate what Mount does and not have to constantly link that with someone from overseas?
I think that's a good question, because I asked a tweet yesterday why people find it so hard to rate our own youth players, because I think this is a problem that's been going on for a while, in which we've had a lot of youth players coming up in the past, like McAkron, for instance, who was going to be the next big thing, and he never made it. So I think people is afraid of rating our players too much, so it's kind of like a defense mechanism or something like that to try to not hype them as much as they can. And when so many big accounts like Alex Goldberg, for instance, is very eager to hype Mount, it's kind of like they have to balance the scale by making sure it's not being hyped too much, if you understand.
Right. So it's more like a counter than really hating someone. It's more hating a particular fan as opposed to hating the player, because a certain fan or a certain fan base is hyping a player, and as you said, it's just balancing that out. So you personally don't think there's genuine hate around Mount from fan base?
I don't know if it's genuine. It might turn into genuine over time, but I think people don't base their own opinions on what they see themselves. They like to read what other people say, and they just take that opinion as gospel instead of forming their own opinions. And yeah, there's a lot of people following Alex that, of course, starts rating Mount without ever having watched him because they trust his judgment. And then you have other accounts out there that is very aggressively hating on these players, and they again have followers that reads what they say, and they start hating on the same players because of that. If you get
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. That absolutely makes sense. And I feel sometime last year, and I'm not going to lie, there were certain times where I felt when Alex was pushing for certain players, it felt like because of his large fan base, sometimes when he wants to impose his particular feelings on a particular player, others sort of automatically tend to endorse that. I'm not saying all of them do, but there is a certain portion of his following that may just endorse that without thinking. And that could contribute to this particular factor. But nonetheless, from your perspective, I suppose, how do you feel about both the players? How do you firstly feel about Mason Mount and his performances so far? And equally, what's your thoughts of, I suppose, down the track when the ban is over, and someone like Mount does do well, what do you do then?
Personally, I first of all, I'm very happy with how Mason has performed. I think he has taken the Premier League by storm. He's not afraid. I saw the Sky Sports Power Rankings yesterday, and he was in the top 5 players this season.
Wow.
So obviously, he's had a great start. He's scored 2 goals. He's been creating the most chances for our team, which is, by the way, the biggest weakness, apparently, that people that wants Aoaur to come in, we're talking about, that he's not creative enough, that he's not creating enough chances, which I think is wrong. And down the line with Aoaur, I don't think we should sign any more midfielders, especially not next summer, because we have an abundance in midfield already. We have Kovacic, Jorginho, Kante, Loftus-Cheek, Mount, of course, and maybe even Barkley, who knows? And obviously the young players, Gilmore, Angerine, and even Ampadu coming back from loan. And, obviously we have a lot of money to spend, but we have a lot of positions on the pitch we should consider strengthening more, like left back. I assume Alonso will be leaving. Azpilicueta is in decline. Maybe we need a leader in a center back line. And Pedro and Willian most likely leaving, so at least one new winger. And we need a new striker as well, because I can't see Giroud and Batshuayi staying. So yeah, we do have a lot of money, but we shouldn't be spending 70, 80 million pounds on yet another midfielder that we don't need.
No, absolutely well. So I agree with you. I think one thing that we need to do when we do have the ban over is we've got to get smarter with the way we purchase. We can't just be going out there and just buying any type of players. As you said, it's so important to look at where the weaknesses are for our team. As you've stated, left back could be a particular weakness with Alonso. As we all seen, he's at no minutes at the moment, so most likely he's probably going to go. So we've got to have a backup for that position. Centre back is a huge problem for us at the moment with all the goals that we're leaking. We don't have a defensive leader at there, and perhaps maybe a striker. I suppose who knows if Tammy does well, then fair enough. But if he doesn't. And even if he does, we do still need a backup. So absolutely
still
good
need depth.
Yeah, we still need depth. So I think you're right. Midfield is something that is so clustered at the moment where, you've got the likes of Ruben Loftus-Cheek, as you said, Jorginho, Kovacic, Mount, someone like Aoaur, he's a fantastic player, but where do you fit him, right? Who's to say that, he just comes waltzing straight into our team if all of those other players are doing well?
I saw this one account saying that, Aoaur, we should sign Aoaur because he would massively improve our midfield straight away. But I don't really see how. How is he going to improve? Where is he even going to play? Who are you going to take out? I mean, you have Jorginho, who is so instrumental to the way he wants to play. who, Lampard is taking a real shine of him. And Kante, obviously, he's not getting dropped. Loftus-Cheek is Morris' favorite player. Lampard loves him. Mount is Lampard's favorite player. And you have highly rated prospects like Gilmore and Angerine who's going to break into the team. So I don't really see them even looking at any more midfielders at this moment. And he's definitely not going to massively improve our midfield at this moment.
Absolutely. I think I agree with that as well. Quick shout out to Khan for joining. Thank you in the live broadcast. I think we've covered this particular topic well. Let's move on to the next topic, which is, I suppose, the contrast to the initial topic, player hate or dislike. We can both agree last season there were certain players, more specifically Jorginho, who was booed at home. He was heavily criticised by many of our fans. And the best part about him is obviously he's come through all of that. He's put in some amazing performances late last year. And this season, he's shown what a class player he is as well. He controls the tempo of our team. Frank Lampard has come out in the media several times saying how brilliant he is to the core of this team, not just infield, but outside of the field in training grounds. He's a leader there. He lifts all these players up. Yet we see people giving Jorginho crap all the time. We've recently had a few accounts in social media, once again, bringing out ridiculous videos and saying, oh, look at what he's doing. He could never be our captain and whatnot. I just want to understand, and I want to get your perspective. What is it? Why do people think like this? They see what we are seeing as well, and what an amazing player this particular player is. Why is there the hate for this player so much?
I think if you look back to last season, I think borderline people don't understand him as a player. They don't understand what his job on the pitch is, what his instructions are, and what he can do. I think a lot of people are annoyed that he's playing in the middle and Kante is not playing in the middle because they think Kante is a great ball-winning midfielder and Jorginho is not acting like prime Makelele, which they would expect from that player, which he's not that player, obviously. And other types of people think that he's going to be like a Fabregas replacement, who's going to be putting through these extraordinary through balls and have this amazing creativity, get 20 assists a season, and it's just not the player he is. So I think the biggest problem is that they don't understand his role in the team and what his actual abilities is, what he actually brings to the team.
No, yeah, I think I agree with that. There's so many people out there, and there's, surprisingly enough, there's so many pundits, people that we've looked up on when they were players, and when they come into the punditry and you think, wow, I can't believe the stuff that they're saying. There's been so many top-notch players who've now become pundits have been saying that, he's not a defensive midfielder, he's not this, he's not that, he doesn't do this. They fail to understand the role of the register. Now, what do you think that is? Is it just the English Premier League thing? Because register is not a new terminology. There's, in Italy you have these type of players. In Spain you have this type of players. Why is it so foreign to, I suppose, the English Football League, something like a register? Why do they fail to sort of comprehend this? And I'm not saying everyone, just a portion of it. Why do they fail to comprehend this, I suppose?
It's interesting you say that, because from all I've seen, pretty much everybody outside of England rates him as a world-class player. And that's because they're used to seeing the player, know what he's going to do. And in the Premier League, no player has really been like that ever, to that degree. And I think they're not used to seeing it. It's something new, and they don't understand it, quite simply, like I said earlier. And I think that's the biggest reason why he's receiving the hate.
Right.
Get the player.
But now, I suppose, being a season into, seeing Jorginho and seeing the way that we play, do you reckon that's probably part of the reason why some of the haters from last season have now, turned and are starting to understand the style of play that we have and the style that Jorginho has, I suppose, or the goods that Jorginho is bringing for us? And do you think that's probably one of the reasons why a lot of the social media, accounts that we know in football Twitter or any other place as well are now starting to sort of convert to liking Jorginho, I suppose?
Yeah, definitely. Because at the end of last season, he was consistently very good, and he started getting more and more praise. And obviously, I wouldn't underestimate the fact that Lampard has come in. He's still playing him. We all know how the fan base feel with him in comparison to Sarri, who was there last season. They felt like the other players was being unfairly treated. He was coming in not based on merits, but based on the almost father-son relationship that they apparently had. And now Lampard is speaking a lot of positive things about him. He still plays him, and he's still delivering good performances. So obviously, people are going to start rating him more by nature. And you also heard against Norwich, they were singing his name. And I think that's a massive step in the right direction. I don't really care why they start rating him. Just think it's important to stop with the negativity and start supporting our players instead.
Now, well said. The point that I want to also touch is, obviously, there's been recently a particular tweet from Matisse, which is absolutely banged, and he touched about this particular point where he said, last season, people hated Jorginho, not because they hated Jorginho, they hated Sarri. And this season, certain people are hating Mount, not because they hate Mount, because they probably don't, they don't rate Lampard. Now,
it's the same thing.
Do you think that's probably part of it, that they're not really hating the player, they're just hating the people that are behind the scenes?
Yeah, but it's because it's pretty similar to Sarri Jorginho in how it's almost like this father-son relationship. It's this player that is really highly rated by the manager that will almost certainly be a starter no matter what. And I saw a tweet yesterday, I'm not going to mention names, but saying that, if Loftus-Cheek is not playing regularly and Mount is playing regularly, they're Lampard out. I don't know if you saw that one.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did.
And that's...
We should retweet that after this.
Yeah. And I think that is just borderline stupid. I mean, you can see Mason Mount is performing well, and that's why he's in the team. He's on a team based on merit. We know that Lampard likes to pick his players out on form, the players that perform well at the time. And if he's suddenly not performing and Ruben is performing well, then obviously Ruben is going to be in the team. So I don't really get that point. It's like they are saying that the manager shouldn't give these players a free pass, but at the same time, they are sitting there saying that and that player should start no matter what. I don't really see the difference.
Highly contradicting. And yeah, this is where sometimes it's so difficult to understand what people are writing or what people are tweeting in football Twitter, specifically, I suppose, when it's from large accounts who've got massive following and the influence sometimes they have as well. Nonetheless, let's now touch on some other players and other types of hate, because obviously this hate, as we've established, between Jorginho and Mount is not because of themselves. It's because of the man that's behind them. Now, this doesn't count for every player. I want to touch, before I touch on the next player, quick shout out to Helgi. Quick shout out. I'm hoping I get this pronunciation right. Michaela, give me a thumbs up if that's the way to pronounce your name. Just wait 2 seconds. Come on, Michaela. Let me know if this is the right way to pronounce your name. Must have gone away for a bit of a break, but nonetheless, I'm hoping that I've pronounced, because I think last week I pronounced that incorrectly. Anyway, now getting back to our topic, which was, there you go, got it right. Yes, awesome. Now I want to touch on Willian. We've spoken about Jorginho, we've spoken about Mount and the hate that goes around it. I want to now touch on Willian. The hate for him is totally different. Now, personally, I don't hate the player, right? I don't hate the player, but he frustrates the hell out of me. And his performance off the bench when he came on against Leicester, I lost my mind. I lost my mind with this particular player. And I said many times in my tweet, and I'm not going to lie about it, I didn't want to see him ever play again, for us again. That was just embarrassing. I know he was injured, and I know, it's his first game back and whatnot, but that was poor attitude from a player that was thrown in to basically, change the contrast of the match. Now, here's one player who gets a lot of hate because, I suppose, of his lack of production. Do you reckon sometimes this hate is, I suppose, is it right? Is it fair on him?
I personally hate Willian myself. But it's not only because but I don't necessarily hate him because of how he performs on the pitch. I hate him because of how he's acting off of it as well. How he's constantly been going against the managers, how his ego is way too big for him to handle. You see him in the latest interview when we talked about Eden Hazard and how Hazard was responsible for 50% of the games they won and he for the other 50%. I mean, that's not true.
Cocky as hell.
Yeah, and he's nowhere close to that level. And it's those kind of things that just makes me not like the player. And then you see him coming on against Leicester in the second game, and he's supposed to have the fresh legs and, yeah, like you said, coming in to change the game, and he's not bothering to take the recovery runs. He's not passing it to other players. He's selfish. There was this one situation where he was running down the left-hand side, and he had multiple options in the box in a good opportunity, and in a good position to score. And he decided to run down to the byline and shoot with his weak foot. And that's the kind of things that just frustrates you. That's what makes you dislike the players. And I think there's a line between disliking and hating the players. Now, on the pitch performances can make you dislike the players, but it's how they perform off of it that can make you hate the players. But obviously people are taking it too far because you see them photoshopping Willian's face into executions and whatnot, and all these players with X's. I mean, and that's too far to at the players saying that.
Yeah, no, absolutely well said, man. I think that's a key point that you said, that there's a difference between hate and dislike. You dislike because you don't appreciate the way that they've performed in a particular match. And that's where it should, I suppose, end. Hate, as you said, certain people out there will edit his pictures and do this, and they do that with fans as well, which is quite embarrassing. And that should never be, I suppose, endorsed at all. It's definitely not right. In terms of Willian's future as well, just while we're at it, what do you think? You think this is it? This is the last season? That's probably why he got the number 10, just so that he can, basically go out and one day tell his kids, when they all grow up, and his grandkids, that he was once upon a time a number 10 for Chelsea?
Probably. I don't know. I have no idea why he got the number 10. I don't think he deserves it at all. And I know that Frank does not rate him at all. There's a reason why it came up yesterday that he wants to keep Kennedy, even though the club wants to send him on loan. Because, I don't think he likes Willian. I don't think he works hard enough. I think he was causing a bus stop behind the scenes when David Luiz was frozen out. They are good friends. We all know that.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that Lampard doesn't want around the team. And coming on against Leicester, performing like that, showing that little will off the ball, this small amount of work rate, and the egotistical thing that he's got going on, it's just he doesn't suit the team. He doesn't want him to be a role model for the younger players coming up. And if it was up to Frank, I think he would leave now. And who knows, if Kennedy stays and we get an offer towards deadline day, maybe he will leave now. But I can't see him staying beyond the season, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I think I'll have to agree with that as well. I suppose one of the key things that stood out for me against the Norwich match was obviously Pedro was injured just before the match in the warm-up. And, you would have thought the immediate replacement at that point would have been Willian, being in the wings. But, Frank didn't do that. He brought in Barkley, which Barkley played embarrassingly that game. But nonetheless, I think he made a statement that, Willian, you're not going to be my go-to man anymore. I'd rather play someone else and put Mason Mount in the wings, for instance. So yeah, it could well possibly be his last season, and nonetheless, I hope he has a good season. If he has a good season, it's good for us. So whenever he's called upon, that he does well. Now, quickly before we wrap this particular section up, the other player that gets a lot of heat in our fan base is Alonso. Once again, do you think he's probably in the same boat as Willian, where his match awareness and his match performances are what lets him down and then leads the fan base to basically hate him? I've lost your voice, Brian.
Yeah, 1 second.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, obviously his performances has not been good enough. In Conte's second season, he was starting to go downhill, and he's not an aesthetically pleasing player to watch. He's boring, and it seems to me like he's not following instructions very well. Because you see all our other fullbacks, right-hand side, left-hand side, are always keeping the width, and he's always dragging himself in centrally all the time. And it's not what we want to see from our fullbacks, because they are the ones supporting the width. And the wingers are supposed to be the more centrally goal-scoring positions, And he's also had a attitude that I don't necessarily endorse from the senior players, particularly, where he's just lazy tracking back. And again, the same with Willian. He's got an ego that is way too high for him to handle.
Yeah, absolutely agree on that as well. That he's both of these two players are so egotistical. It's not even funny. And I feel this season already, just like Frank is sort of making a statement with Willian, he's also, I feel like he's making a statement with Alonso. We have not even seen Alonso feature once this season yet, and it's quite evident that Emerson is the number one and Alonso is a far number two at the moment. Even if Emerson is 50% fit, I feel like Frank would start him over Alonso. And that's I suppose the news for Alonso to start looking. I suppose that's fantastic. I suppose we've covered that particular topic. Now, the next one that I want to touch on is something that I've been so confused about in this past week, and I've been confused about it since the introduction of it, and it's none other than VAR. Now, looking at the Norwich game, right? And I want to get your thoughts around this, and what you sort of think about it. There's been plenty of commentary around and whatnot. A few people, when I've tweeted about this particular thing, has replied back and had some interesting take on it. Now, that first goal that we conceded against Norwich, it all started off with Tammy Abraham being fouled, and then that led to the particular goal. Why wasn't VAR being called upon when that goal obviously happened to just check what sort of took place prior to that goal being scored?
Yeah, that's a good question. I read a tweet, I don't know if it was later on Saturday or Sunday, that the reason why VAR didn't intervene was because too much time had passed from that happening to the ball ending up in the back of the net. And I think that's just a weak excuse, because that shouldn't have anything to say. It's the same attack. It's like 15 seconds or so earlier. If that's too much time, then it just sounds like a bullshit made up excuse, in my opinion, because that was a clear free kick and they didn't even want to look at it.
So what is the, has anyone passed you any message on, what is the normal time, or have you done any research to see what is the sort of the time limit until, we can't call upon VAR?
I personally not done any research or seen anything about that, but I find it hard to believe that, 15 seconds earlier in the same attack is too much time. That just doesn't make sense. If that's a rule, then they should definitely change that.
Right, right. And this is the other ambiguity as well, that no one seems to know the rules around it. And I feel they, I don't know, they probably do have rules, but it just feels like as a fan that all of these things are sort of happening on the fly. They just choose what they want to do during the match. Um, do you feel that, when incidents like that happen, and obviously we don't want to slow the game down, but post match, do you think, just like managers have press conferences and players have press conferences, do you think the referees or the VAR itself, whoever represents the VAR, should come out and actually explain these matters to us? Because there was another incident in the second half where Aspilicueta, we could all see as fans that he was hit clearly. Now, why wasn't that also being looked upon?
And the challenge on Mason when he went out injured, he was stepped upon. You could clearly see that's on purpose, and yet they're not even looking at it. Again, it's another strange decision.
Exactly. So, in regards to the Aspilicueta one, because that was a really, really interesting one. Was there any explanation as to why that wasn't even considered, or how does this work? Like, does the players have to appeal for it, or does the referee, trigger it? How does this all work?
I think there's a rule change now that if the players are, taking up this VAR signal to the referee, they will get a yellow card. I don't know if you've seen that. So it can't be that they have to protest against it. I think VAR just has to look at the situation and just consider themselves whether they're going to say anything or not, because the referee has already made his decision, and then it's up for VAR to take a look at it and maybe change it.
Yeah, no, good point. I just want to quickly read out something that James has just commented, which was quite interesting, just caught my eye. He said, Miz, the rule is that once the ball is passed backwards, like it was after Tammy was fouled, it is considered a new attacking phase of play. So the decision on the foul won't be changed. Stupid rule, I know, but that's the Premier League for you. That makes sense, James. And I feel... Yeah, that probably was the reason, because once Tammy was fouled, the ball did go backwards, and then, so that's interesting. I suppose we do have to draw a line as to how we want to see VAR, but I don't know. I feel like that since that incident led to a particular goal, I feel like the Premier League needs to, and that's fine. I mean, it's all trial and error at the moment. I feel like Premier League needs to just look into all of this and really assess this post-season and see, okay, well, should those sort of incidents be looked upon when a goal is particularly scored? What do you think about that, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's in a starting phase, so it's going to take some time. It's not going to be perfect from the get-go. So I think they're going to learn quite a lot this season of what they can change going into next season. And I think there's a lot of things that could potentially be changed. Like, I don't know if you noticed with the offside rule, that's what I saw in the World Cup last season and the Women's World Cup now in the summer. It was, the linesmen are having, and if they are not 100% sure that it's an offside, they keep their flag down and then let VAR check it later so that they can disallow it if it was offside. But in the Premier League, they have figured out that the linesman should raise his flag no matter what, and then the referee should not blow the whistle. And I don't really understand the point about that, because the players are going to see the flag, they're going to get distracted, they're going to stop playing, and it's just going to ruin the entire situation. And we saw that absolutely. In the semi-final against Tottenham in the League Cup, when they got a penalty in the first leg, that was the same thing, because the linesman is taking up his flag, Kepa stops playing, the entire defense stops playing, and then the referee doesn't blow the whistle, so Kepa realizes that, oh shit, I have to run for the ball. And then he's late, he tackles Kane, and it's a penalty. That's a good example of what happens, and because the players don't understand what happens, and it ruins the entire situation.
It ruins, exactly right. It ruins the entire situation and leaves everyone in confusion. I did touch on, should the referees or VAR have a press conference as well? And I just want to read out a quick comment from Khan here, who said, I think ref press conference is a bad idea for insinuating conjunctures and snowball into crazy conspiracy theories. What's your thoughts? Like, do you think it's probably, just like managers come out and they have to explain their strategies and tactics, and they have to, put their, I suppose, balls on the line, and so do the players. Do you think it's not fair on referees to come out and explain some of their decisions?
I think it would be interesting to see what they would say, but I think people would be very biased towards what they say. I mean, like he says, the conspiracy theories. It's very easy to interpret things the way you want to see them. And I think it's going to cause more harm than good for the referees. It's better if they maybe they can have an interview after the game or come out and say that and that decision was like so, if it's an odd decision or something like that. But I don't think press conferences is something that should be happening on a regular basis, because I think people just heard it more than it's just them good.
Yeah, no, fair point. At the end of the day, the referees do get targeted a lot. And then, if they have a press conference, I suppose, as much as fans, we want to hear their point of view, but they could be put into a lot of, I suppose, distress, on top of all the distress that they always get anyway. Just quickly, I want to read out something that Eli has stated as well in regards to VAR, and he's, basically putting a bit of perspective on other sport. And so he said, I find that in sports such as rugby, they allow the TMO equivalent to VAR. Once the period of play ends, then they go back, go and check that TMO. So yeah, so they don't. So what I think Eli is trying to say is that, they allow that play to continue on, whether it's backwards or forwards or whatnot, and then if something transpires out of it, they then check the whole play out. I suppose in football, there's a difference in, the new attack phase. So if a particular phase goes forward, but then they pass it all the way to the back, and they restart, I suppose that's treated as a new phase. I suppose, yeah, this is something, as you said, Brian, as well, it's something that needs to be trialed out. Obviously, this is the first season, and hopefully, they do make it better and better in the upcoming seasons. Now, moving on to the next topic, I guess we could talk about VAR all day long, but we'll probably just be as confused as everyone else. Now, moving on to the next topic, we've got a special request here from Helgi. This wasn't part of the topic, but I want to respect our viewers that have taken the time out and come in, and I hope Brian, you and me can decipher this as well. Helgi has asked, guys, discuss about the UCL draw as well. Now, I want to touch base on this quite quickly because we want to go into the preview of the Sheffield game. But Brian, what do you think, man? We saw the pots. What do you feel, from your perspective, will be the draw for us? I'm not sure if you remember every single team in the pot, but I do. We do know the second pot has some heavy duty teams there. What do you think we're gonna end up getting?
It's all speculation at this point anyway. It's guesswork, so it doesn't really matter what you think. What I hope we're gonna get is definitely not like a group of death, because we're in a new project. It takes time to settle in, and I don't want us to start off on a back foot by getting Real Madrid, Inter, and Red Bull Leipzig, for instance. I mean, we can quickly go out of that group by starting off with a couple bad games. So I don't mind having one good team, because that's almost inevitable unless we're really lucky. But beyond that, I think the last two teams should be as low level as possible, just to give us as good a chance as possible to advance to the knockout rounds.
As logical as that sounds, and I want that so badly as well, but for some reason, deep down inside me, I so want to face Real Madrid and having that opportunity to see Hazard come back at Stamford Bridge, and hopefully we beat them as well. And I feel like, I want to have Inter Milan because I think they're in the third pot, and give one up on Conte as well. But I do understand that would be a hell of a group if we have Real Madrid and Inter as well in our group, and that definitely would go down as a group of death. But for some reason, I just want us to really give it against some of these big teams. What would your thoughts be if we do end up having, let's say, Real Madrid and Inter Milan in our draw?
Yeah, it would be special because I also want to see Hazard return to the Stamford Bridge, and to give it into Antonio Conte would be amazing after the lawsuits and all that. But as much as I want that, and of course, if you would tell me beforehand that if we pick that group, we're going to win, then obviously I take that group. But we also run the risk of being eliminated in the group stage by getting that group. So I think it's more important for me that we just advance at this point.
Nah, well said. And one of my, the tweet that I have pinned in my profile is that we want to get into, I'm expecting that we'll get into at least the quarterfinals, and that can only be possible if we have a somewhat easy group stage and get lucky with the second round, and hopefully we can make it to the quarters. And I think that would be a fantastic achievement for this crop of players for the time being. Quick, I suppose, prediction from your side. Who do you think is the hot favorite for the Champions League for the upcoming season?
You're going to have to say Manchester City as usual, because they have a good team. They're in a good project with Pep. But at the same time, I don't think Pep has been in a semi-final since he was at Barcelona in the Champions League. So he's got a little ghost going on there, which, you've seen with City as well. They're playing well, but they just can't advance any further. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen again. But on the paper, they are probably the favorites going into the season. Obviously, Real Madrid as well has got a lot of good players, but I just don't see the mentality in that team to be able to win. I think it's just a whole bunch of good individuals. And looking at Zidane's management as well, I haven't been overly impressed after Ronaldo left them. And Juventus has got a good team, but I can't see Sarri making it work that well in his first season, especially when they're used to playing such a defensive style of football from beforehand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're right. At the moment, Man City, that's the only thing. I feel Pep has cleaned up absolutely everything in England, and this is one thing he's now desperate to get. And I feel like their team is ready. If it's not this season, I don't know when it's ever going to be. They're so well equipped this season, and it just has to be this. Khan's just quickly thrown in a cheeky comment. Won't rule out Klopp doing a repeat. Yes, absolutely. Liverpool is just buzzing at the moment, so why not? All right, let's move on to the preview of our match against Sheffield. Before we get into the lineups and what we sort of want to see, or what you want to see from the team, quickly, how important do you think this particular... I know Norwich 3 points was massively important. How important is this 3 points moving into the international break?
Yeah, it's very important because, like you say, the international break, I think it's good to build on the momentum that we got last weekend, and to also go into this break with another 3 points. And we have a lot of top teams playing tough matches. We have the North London derby going on, and it's a good chance for us to move ahead of some of those teams early on. And I think it's massive to get 3 points. Also for Frank to get his first win at Stamford Bridge, and also for the young players, maybe even Tammy. I expect him to start this game as well, to maybe get another goal going into international break, to build on confidence and to have the fan base ease off a little bit on the way that he's been treated so far.
Correct. I feel the same as well, that just as important it was last week, it's absolutely important to get the 3 points moving into the international break, and we can go off with, on a high. As you said, it would be Frank's first win at Stamford Bridge as a manager as well, so that would be a further momentum gain. Overall, it's just so important. I just really hope that the players come out and have the right attitude as they did against Norwich as well. And hopefully we can keep a clean sheet, which is so important. Moving into the lineups now, and let's break it down. I suppose from defense to offense. We can both agree, I suppose, Kepa's going to be the keeper. Who's going to be in your defensive lineup?
I think the back four is going to be the exact same as it's been in all the other games. Obviously, Emerson is Clara Alonso. Azpilicueta is the only option we've got at right back. And I don't know if Rudiger is fit to play this game, but even if he is, I can't see him just throwing him into the starting 11. Zuma Christensen has been solid individually in the last couple of games, and I think it's more important to just set that back line and get them used to playing with each other. And I think it would be unfair to remove them from the team because of how they have performed in the last 3 games.
Yeah, and that's right. They've both have had certain spurs of great individual moments, but at the same time, we've been leaking goals. Matisse once again had tweeted something last game week before the Norwich game where he wanted to see Tomori start. How do you feel about that particular scenario if Frank ends up giving Tomori a chance? I personally don't think he will tinker with the defense right now. Just before the international break, he'll probably keep the same thing, especially when we've come away with the 3 points. But how would you feel, if someone like Tomori got an opportunity?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Tomori, so I wouldn't be against him starting. He proved against Liverpool that he's not afraid of playing well at this level. He played really good against us at Stamford Bridge last season, so he's definitely got it in him to play on this level. But like you say, before the international break, I don't think he wants to make too many changes, in especially the back line. Yes, we are conceding goals, but I don't think the goals can be solely blamed on centre backs, because I think the midfield is being overrun too easily. There's too much space between the lines, and they are put in very difficult situations. Also, I think Azpilicueta has been a huge weakness by consistently playing opposition players on side, losing his marking on players, not paying attention and stuff like that. So I think it's a little unfair to say that the centre backs is the biggest reason for us conceding goals, because I don't really see it that way.
No, well said, man. I tweeted something earlier this week where I was highlighting some of the goals that we considered against Norwich, and we can individually pinpoint certain mistakes, but as a collective, there's major issues. It's not just one individual making errors; it's multiple individuals making errors into a bigger, issue. And you're right. Several times, Azpilicueta has been in the thick of those particular issues. Now, moving swiftly into our midfield, what's the formation I suppose you're looking for, or you're expecting, or you want, and who are your midfield?
I want to see a 4-3-3 because I think that looked really well against Liverpool. We had not as much space in between the lines as what we had in the other games. But I think it depends a lot on Kante being fit. I don't think he will be fit to play this game. I don't think Frank will risk him. And therefore, I think he's going to go with the 4-2-3-1 like he did in the last game. And so I think he's going to keep going with the Kovacic Jorginho pivot, because that's been working okay, at least in the attacking phase. And then, yeah, but like you say as well, players making mistakes, obviously, but also collectively struggling to defend. That takes time. It looks like Frank is focused a lot on the attack in preseason, and the defense takes time, particularly. And moving players in and out of the team is not going to solve that problem. You have to make the players get used to playing with each other, get to know each other, and for Lampard to make small tactical adjustments. And over time, it will just look a lot better than what it's doing now.
Yeah, well said. I don't think a lot of fans understand that how important sometimes it is to stick by players, even though they're making certain mistakes. But if you constantly chop and change, say for instance, we bring in Tomori for this game, he makes a mistake, we chop him and we bring someone else. They make a mistake, then we chop them and bring. We'll never get the consistency. We'll never get players gelling together. So that's a fantastic point that you've made, Brian, that it's so important that we've only played 3 games so far in the Premier League, so it's not like we've used this particular combination for 10 games or 15 games and we're still seeing issues. So yeah, you're right. So for you, Kante is probably not going to start. I feel the same as well, that we shouldn't risk him just before the international break. He has been going through so many different injuries. So for me, it's probably a double pivot as well with Jorginho and Kovacic. But on that though, I did notice in the heat map for Kovacic, although we are saying it's a double pivot, it's almost as if they're playing still 4-3-3, where Jorginho's in the base and Kovacic was predominantly circling around that right centre mid area in his heat map. Do you think, is it really a pivot when they're playing, or is it still the 4-3-3 with, Barkley? I feel like was the left centre mid against Norwich.
Yeah, that's an interesting fact. Obviously, formations change all the time during games. We have different formations when we're on the ball. It's different formations when we're defending or off the ball. So obviously, just because we start with a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, it's not necessarily going to stay that way the entire game. So if we have a lot of possession, heat maps is obviously going to be higher for certain players. That is supposed to be higher when we're in possession. And we all know that Lampard loves to outman the opposition players, to be more players in their half, in their box, to try to get more players up there to get more players that can score goals. So it's not surprising to me that you see Kovacic being a little higher. And also, you also demand for the number 10 to go deeper, because you see we have issues with defending from midfield. And that was a problem with Mount when he played as a 10 against Leicester, how he's constantly spending too much time high up the pitch, maybe too high up the pitch, and it exposes our midfield a lot because he's not helping out, which is the pro of the 4-3-3, because the player will naturally be a little deeper.
No, absolutely right. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it may seem like we are starting in a particular formation, but it constantly changes and shifts throughout the match. I suppose depending on the situation that we're in. If it's in defense, maybe it's a different formation. When it's in attack, it's a different formation, and different situations in the game. If we're seeing that the opposition is really, really putting us into a lot of pressure, maybe it's a different formation then as well. And Frank has alluded on this, that he wants the team to be fluid constantly and not be stuck on a particular formation, which is great. Now, moving forward, who are so you've got the double pivot. So just quickly to recap, you've got Kepa, you've got Aspilicueta, you've got Zuma, Christiansen, Emerson, and you've got Kovacic and Jorginho. Who are your forwards at the moment?
If you take advantage that we're going to play the 4-2-3-1, it's obviously Mount will be starting as a 10. It all depends on whether Pedro is fit. I haven't heard anything about that. But I do expect Lampard to start him on the right if he's fit, because of his off-the-ball work rate, and Pulisic is going to be starting on the left. So I'm expecting them three to be starting there. Barkley did not show enough to be starting this game, last game, unless obviously there's injuries. Willian is not going to touch the team. Kennedy is not going to touch the team at this point. So those three players are the only ones you really can pick from that has been performing well. And I cannot see him dropping Tammy after his brace last week.
Yeah, I feel like dropping Tammy would be the biggest shock in the Chelsea fan base at the moment, after scoring the brace and the kind of brace that he scored as well. Two absolutely brilliant goals. You can't drop a player after that. When he's building confidence and at home as well, he's going to be buzzing. Now, just quickly on the Pulisic case, there's been a few fans in our fan base, I suppose, have been on the case of Pulisic, and they're expecting a lot more from him and whatnot. How do you sum up his first few games with us? And obviously you've got him down as the left wing player against Sheffield. Are you satisfied with what you've seen so far? Obviously, he can get better, but what's your thoughts on him?
Personally, I am very satisfied with what I've seen. I see a lot of potential. I can understand that some people might be unhappy with how he's performed, because, he's got a lot of expectations on him. He's the replacement of Hazard to many people. He had an expensive price tag. And, he was supposed to do what Hazard did. But I don't really see that as realistic. He's still only 20 years old, which people have to realize. And he's coming into a new league, it's new teammates, it's a brand new system, and it takes time. But you can definitely see the potential is there. I think his attitude is really good. He's working hard off the ball, tracking back defensively. And, he's got assists. The pass to Giroud against Liverpool is an amazing pass. And the goal
Yeah.
he scored that was disallowed was a fantastic goal. Hazard couldn't have done that any better. And he had an assist in the last game as well, and a pre-assist, by the way, even though people said he was not playing very well. So you can see the ability is there. He just, like everyone else on that age, needs time to really get going. But I'm happy so far.
Yeah, same. I think some certain fans, I suppose, are probably being a bit harsh on him. As you said, Brian, I think what I really enjoy about Pulisic is his ability to work so hard off the ball, tracking back, helping defense, bombing up forward. Even that goal for Tammy's first goal that we scored against Norwich, there was a ball that from Mount that found Pulisic, and Pulisic drives it forward and allows Azpilicueta to make the overlapping run, and he nicely releases Azpilicueta. So he had a hand in that particular goal as well. Obviously, Mount's goal was a nice assist. The nice interplay they had between Mount and himself opened the gates for Mount to smash that goal in. So, I think, as you said, he's 20. We just need to be patient. Things could have been a bit different, I suppose. That goal against Liverpool, as you've mentioned, and we would have all had a different conversation. But nonetheless, it's still. I feel like he's on the right track. So I suppose to recap your team: Kepa, Spilicueta, Zuma, Christiansen, Emerson, Kovacic, Jorginho. You've got Mount as the number 10. You've got Pulisic on left wing. You've got Pedro if he is fit. If he's not fit, though, who do you start on the right wing?
I start Pulisic on the right, Mount on the left, and probably Barkley as the 10. We don't really have that many options going forward.
Right, no, good choice. And you'd have Tammy Abraham up front. Now, with this particular, let's say Pedro is fit, what's your prediction in terms of score?
Score? I'm hoping we're going to be scoring a lot of goals, obviously. I think Lampard wants to set a team up. I think we're going to go out like we did against Leicester in the opening minutes. I think he wants to score as many goals as possible early on to kill the game. I think he wants to get a big win going into preseason. Mm-hmm. And at that point, it's just, we all know our players can be good finishers, but we also know that they can be really bad in front of goals. So it's impossible to make a prediction. So it kind of just depends on what day they're having. But if I was to make a prediction, I'm going to say, I think we're going to have our first clean sheet. So I'm probably going to go with 3 or 4-0.
Nice. I can't wait, man. I'm really desperate to see a clean sheet. Just quickly as well, just before we wrap up, have you seen any of Sheffield United's game? I mean, I haven't caught any. I've just seen some highlights of the equaliser when they scored against the one before the last game, the one before Leicester, when they won 1-0. Can't remember who it was. It was
Crystal Palace, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Crystal Palace. Yeah. Have you caught any of their games? Do you know if there are any particular players that are a bit of a threat for us, perhaps? Any particular player that we need to probably just look out for?
Not really. I haven't really paid too much attention to that. I know I've heard a lot of positive things about Chris Wilder, their manager. And I know that Oli McBurney has started off on the good foot, but I don't really have too much to say about Sheffield United.
Nonetheless, as you were saying, we shouldn't be worried too much about them, right?
It's at home at Stamford Bridge, so anything but 3 points would be a disappointment, obviously.
Perfect. Let's go with that 4-0 win. I'd love a 4-0, especially the nil, and 4 goals. Hopefully 2 from Mount, 2 from Tammy Abraham. What do you reckon?
Yeah, that would be perfect. Go into international break with them being our only goal scorers. 4 goals each.
Yeah, and still getting no appreciation from certain parts of the fan base. But just before we wrap up, Brian, I want to say thank you heaps for coming into this episode.
No, thank you for having me.
And just before I let you go, I'll do a quick shout out for all the people that have joined as well. Eli, thanks for coming in, man. Much appreciated. Khan, thank you so much. And asking putting all those comments as well. Michaela, thanks for joining us. and we had Helgi. Thanks for suggesting that UCL draw as well. James, thank you so much for those key, insightful comments. And that's about it. Before we go, Brian, do you want to tell us? This is your time to shine. Do any plugins that you need to do? Tell us what you're going to be up to. What are some of the things that we can expect from you in football Twitter? So on and so forth. This is your time.
With a spotlight. No, I'll be doing the same things I've been doing. Just tweeting as usual, let's say. Cheeky tweets, as you call it. No, but yeah, nothing. I want to take this time to add one more thing, though, if I might, to
sure.
To the Mason Mount Aoaur comparison that we talked about.
Yeah.
Because like I said, the biggest thing that people are criticizing Mount for is that his lack of creativity. That Aour is going to add the creativity to the team, and I find that a little funny because I saw this statistic a couple days ago. I retweeted it a couple times, in which it was the season that Mount was playing for Vitesse. He was 18 years old at the start of that season, compared to Aour's season last year at Lyon. And when you look at creativity, you're looking at key passes. I mean, things you can create, basically. That's what I look at least. And you see Mason having 72 key passes in that season in 2,100 minutes, and Houssam Aour at 45 in over 3,000 minutes.
Wow.
So at that point, he's played 1,000 minutes less than Aour, and he's got 27 more key passes. So I don't really see how he is supposed to add creativity to the team that Mason Mount can't do.
Correct.
And you say,
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, and people are saying that Mason's taking set pieces, corners and indirect free kicks and so on. That's giving you key passes. Obviously, it helps, but that's also a part of the game. I mean, if you have a good corner taker, for instance, that is a massive boost. And you can see, as a Chelsea fan, you should at least be knowing that when you see Willian hitting the first man consistently on the corners, you should really understand the importance of having someone who can take them well. And appreciate that instead of just criticizing it and saying that that's the only reason you have key passes, because obviously he has abundance of creativity, and he is a much more proven goal scorer than what Aour is, which is also something that people have been screamed about in our midfield. So I don't really see why the comparison is being made between those two, and why that is the argument that's being used against Mount when Aour is clearly not any better than him at that.
Yeah, and it's such a good point in regards to set pieces. I feel like when we have the attacking set pieces now, that we're a genuine threat again, as opposed to in previous seasons. Some of these free kicks, some of these corners, sooner or later, one of these is going to go in. A defender or someone's going to put a header in. And more practice in the training session, and eventually we're going to start seeing more and more of these goals, and that's a fantastic asset to have for us as a team. It just gives us another outlet of how to score another goal. It doesn't always have to be an open play. We can be a threat in set pieces, and so what if set pieces counts as a key pass? If we're going to nitpick on every little thing, and as you said, Mount's a better scorer. His scoring abilities are so much better. And look, I don't want to use this as a way to disrespect Aour. He's a fantastic player, but I just hate the fact that we have to downgrade Mount to talk or hype about Aour. But nonetheless, look, we move as we always do as a fan base. And once again, Brian, thank you so much for joining, and hopefully I will get to see you one more time in the other side of the coin. How'd you feel, man? You enjoyed the show? You enjoyed the channel?
Yeah, it's a great channel. I watched some of your videos before, and you're doing good work. You're a good host, and just thank you for having me here. I loved it.
No problems. Well, I'm pretty sure I'll see you all guys very soon in Football Twitter. I'm going to take this opportunity and make a nice trailer for you. So look out for that, and look out for that trailer for all the guys that have joined as well. Until next time, everyone, see you later.